comparison to the rest of that field, it's kind of remarkable that he was able to get up and get that win. But I agree, tough sequence, a lot of beaten favorites that I think some may have relied on within their tickets.
Yeah, it's just we see a lot of pick fives where it just seems like a couple of really tough horses win. And I mean, I agree. Listen, I could never have had just many of those winners. So I'm not, but interesting sequence. And $323,000 in the pick five sequence starts in race number 7 of our 11 race card. And of course, the carryover just under $40,000 in the pick 6 as well, starting in race 6. We will start you off by heading over to NYRA Bets. We've got lots to talk about in today's 11 race card. Match 200. We'll match with $200 of your initial deposit. We've got track stats. Check them out when you're over at NYRA Bets as well. Also, that carryover we mentioned, $323,211 in the pick five. Tell you what, you get very few of these opportunities for that kind of pool in a pick five. And it's not an easy sequence by any stretch. But I think at least heading in, it seems like it's possible you could find a way through it, at least to start out. Obviously, the results will dictate how well you did after that. But an interesting sequence for sure. 4 of the 5 races on the turf. Pick 6 carryover also. That starts in race 6, the race before it. That's $39,020. We also have a bankroll builder, I think. Bet 50 to win the Woodbine Mile. You get 20 towards your Breeders' Cup bankroll. I still haven't figured out that tweet of the guy complaining about it, but I'll never get that one figured out. What else do we have? Cross Country Pick 5, I think we do. Monmouth, Woodbine, one at Belmont and 2 at Woodbine. Woodbine Mile, I like a horse in there.
Do you?
Yeah, I'm really thinking of singling the 1 to 9 shot, Naval Power.
Oh, creative.
Yeah, no, I worked.
I think that's a really strong opinion.
Worked
Best
long
bet
and
of the
hard
day.
for that.
Yep.
Yeah, no, that was a hard one to come up with. So that's essentially a pick 4, as that horse will be an overwhelming favorite in the remnants of the Woodbine Mile. Summer might be a little bit tougher, a big field in there. We're on the air from 12:30 to 6:30, I want to say today, all day on FS2. Race number 1. We'll start by showing the video of Moment's Notice in race number 1, though Eddie's really excited about that. That was a good segue there, Eddie.
He's on his game.
The West Point horse that ran a reasonable race to finish second to a very impressive win in Jonathan's Way. I get, Sarah, that this is the horse to beat. I don't have a problem with that. Obviously, it depends on the firsters. I don't know. I just get the feeling that this horse had a couple chances. And yes, Jonathan Way, who looks like much the horse to beat in the Iroquois, but Jonathan Way was like not 4 lengths better than him. He was like 8 lengths better than him. Still ran the race. He's the horse to beat, but I'm going to try to beat him.
Yeah, I think that's completely fair. I just didn't really see an overwhelming pedigree or something from a first-time starter to really indicate that I wanted to go in that direction instead, because this is a horse that's coming out of 2 solid efforts at Saratoga in those maiden special weight races, both hitting the board, both with buyers in the 70s. And I know that you were saying that you felt as though Jonathan's Way was going to be a horse that was going to be favored in the Iroquois, and I completely agree with that.
Yeah, it's a bad morning line.
Yeah,
well, they have a morning line later in Churchill that doesn't think racing in New York matters, so that kind of hurts them. I like this picture, Eddie. This is cool.
We've never looked better.
This is a hot picture, yeah. Something going on here we should know about? There we go.
There we are.
Well, don't worry. Kyle's right on top of things over there. I think I just heard a snore. He was jolted awake. I get it. I'm interested in first-time stars in here. I thought it was I thought that the 5 Alias a little bit interesting. The Dam was pretty good. She's a horse that ran figures in the 90s, so I thought she might be interesting, a homebred for Ellen J. Foxwoods. I also think Vekoma Rides is probably going to be the first that takes the most money. We saw John Kimmel get a victory with the first on the turf yesterday, and this was a Vekoma, and apparently has been working well, and the second Dam was a very good runner. So the 5 and 7 are my best guesses against the 4.
Completely fair, and I think that first-time starter that he debuted yesterday, that was one that he'd been trying to get into a race for quite some time, and I was a little surprised that horse didn't take a little bit more money, one that we had spent some time talking about that sold for a decent amount as well.
I think the problem with that horse was that it was running long, and the previous times the horse had been entered had been turf sprints, and I think that threw a lot of people off, including myself. McHale showed a lot of speed first time out and faltered badly in the Moment's Notice race. I don't think he's impossible, but he fell apart so quickly in there. Papa Golf is going to take money for Todd Pletcher, I would imagine. I mean, the Dam was okay, but these Pletcher horses tend to be runners.
Working fast as well. I mean, you don't work a bullet out of 102 others by accident. I mean, I think that's something that's worth noting. I just didn't really love the pedigree on this one. There wasn't a ton going on. The Dam is a half to a couple of graded stakes winners, but as far as her production herself, yeah.
See what happens in race number 1. Race number 2, a couple of scratches in here, including Saratoga Warrior, would have taken some money. Where'd you go?
I went to a first-time starter on the rail. Not a ton to go on with this one, as well as some of the others in here, but I'm just tired of some of the horses that we've seen on repeat at Saratoga, not getting the job done. And with a very small sample size, Michelle Gianggiulio is doing well with her first-time starters, really only having 6 over the past 2 years that fit in there, but she is 2 for 6 with a 460 ROI, so is certainly capable of getting them ready to go. The works are average, but I like that there's sort of a mix in terms of the works being a little bit quicker and then being a little bit more of those maintenance type of workouts. And we'll see what we end up getting from this one, because I just did not really find a strong other direction that I wanted to go in here as far as...
She had a first-time start in the dirt.
Yes.
Why did I come up with 0? I looked.
On the
Oh,
dirt?
I know why. Because I looked up 2-year-old. She has
Yeah,
not
there
had.
was only one
She has
2-year-old.
not had a single. I don't think she's had a single two.
It's turf.
Right. I don't think
Yep.
she's had a single 2-year-old dirt first-time star. It's a homebred. I don't really have anything to say. It's just a total guess. I obviously left the horse out. I was interested in the 4 Gimme Gimme among the firsters more than the 1, maybe because I'm drawn to David Duggan's horses. But 2 of the 3 foals from this dam did run figures in the 70s. I don't love that they paid $75,000 and they're running the horse for 40. But maybe they're just trying to find a race that they can win, and obviously the horse, in their opinion, not worth the $75 they paid. But I ended up going to Pandemic Hero, and Hero does show up as a listed as a new gelding, though who the heck knows? It is supposedly a new gelding. This is a horse that showed a lot of speed. I know didn't get bet in the debut. Wesley Ward, if you look through the numbers, has some good numbers going turf to dirt in their second starts. And it just feels like a Wesley Ward that might just be too fast for these horses early and run them off their feet and maybe wire the field. I didn't have a huge opinion here because scheduling Dude, who's going to be short in this race, I'm not sure what to make of his first race. I thought
There was
he ran
trouble, but how much? You know?
okay. Well, I mean, he was just sort of rating him behind horses, and when he pulled out in the stretch, he had no run. Obviously, this is not really a world-beating field looking here, but I'm not sure why that horse is supposed to be favored in this race based on the first race.
Right. There's that moment where he is checked back a little bit and he's still kind of green, but as you mentioned, he didn't really do any running once he was then clear, and why would I take him over a horse like Chasing Colton in this spot? When Chasing Colton's a better price and has better races to go back to.
Well, Chasing Colton, we'll see if he's a better price. It depends. Looking at some of the doubles, they seem to be very, very close. The thing about Chasing Colton is he's run faster races, but he's had 3 chances. Scheduling Duel's had only 1, so obviously he has sort of more room in that sense to improve. We'll see what happens in race number 2. Race number 3, I like the 7 Borletti who scratched, so I changed my picks around in this race. And I'll be honest, one of the reasons I changed my pick was that Wayne Potts had a horse that seemed to run extremely well and was bet
Yesterday.
like they knew the horse was going to win in the first race yesterday. And the Castle horse, whatever you pronounce it, Sleeping Beauty's Castle, she looks like, no, it's like Neuenstein or something.
Yeah.
It just feels like he's the controlling speed in here, and I didn't want to scratch in the 2 on top, Anthracite, because Anthracite never wins, so I liked having him for second, though I do think he ran okay for Linda last time out.
He did. I like him when he can be somewhat in more of a stalking position, but overall, I completely agree that he's just not a winning type of horse, and I think we both had some interest in Borletti and possibly being a little bit more aggressive towards the outside. But now with this 4 horse getting loose on the lead potentially, or at least establishing himself as a front runner, I just didn't see a ton else to go on, because when you look around, it's a lot of horses that we've seen a lot of that don't necessarily have that forward position.
Like Manganera and Montebello, who both made big runs last time. But these are 2 horses that are pace compromised in this race, and even more so with the 7 scratch. That was a cue, Eddie. Eddie, that was a cue. There you go. I know you're a little rusty. You were lounging around while we were up in Saratoga working hard while Kyle was killing himself. I mean, literally killing himself.
Out dying in the heat.
It's just, and the other thing about Manganera is the horse just never wins, and it was also a lower level race, but it's off the claim for David Jacobson, and as we saw yesterday.
Anything can happen.
Yeah, it's a little confusing. I mean,
I will say that horse did have some prior form, boss-making boss.
What he never has had in his career is speed.
That's true.
And suddenly he, in a paceless race, was, right up near the lead, and actually the pace came up quicker than you would have thought.
Yeah.
And he was right up near the lead. So while, there were some things that made him a chance, he's really a 2-turn horse, not a 1-turn horse. But regardless, that sort of David Jacobson magic that appears about as often as Haley's Comet. I don't know. So, I'm not going to be shocked if this horse improves, but I don't like him.
No, and I don't want a horse that's stepping up after coming out of a race in Saratoga that on paper it's already a class step up versus what we're seeing here, where maybe that would be a race where it's actually even more of a step up than it seems on paper.
Race number 4 is the first turf race today, and the turf races are they're complicated by the fact that we saw a pretty extreme inside bias on the turf courses yesterday. I would say it was probably more extreme on the outer turf. This is on the inner turf. But Stephen Ground was at a gigantic premium. Now, maybe it was just the first day and a few races over. It'll mitigate a little bit. But that is something that's going to really come into play in this race. I don't like, I'm curious, why did you leave this horse out, the number 6, Quite Continental? Because I see you don't have this horse in your top 4 either. We'll show the replay. Eddie?
I think it's just one of those situations where looking at those Saratoga races and looking at where this compares from a class standpoint, yes, this horse was claimed for $40,000 in Saratoga from Linda Rice and then comes back here in what looks like a similar spot. But is this actually kind of a negative drop? I know financially it's not, but based on level of competition,
Wait a second, it's not dropping. I'm confused.
I know, I'm just saying, like, when you're looking at the fields that we saw in Saratoga for some of the lower levels in terms of class and who's actually in there, it might be the same level on paper, but it might not be in practicality.
Well, I mean, to be fair, Tongue Twister came back and improved a lot to run 3rd in a much tougher spot, so I'm not sure. Either this horse would take a lot of money because Safi Joseph claimed it, and Safi Joseph obviously was putting on a show up in Saratoga. His numbers off the claim with turf horses are just not nearly as strong, and I thought this horse would be one that would take a lot of money in here, and I'm just not convinced, and I thought there were better horses to play. I think Coach Sessa is a horse that was somewhat dangerous to begin with and becomes even more dangerous because she drew the rail and because the horses there there are contenders in here are all towards the outside in here. And a horse like Coach Sessa, who did run well enough in her debut and not so great in her next starts, but as a 2-year-old, she really benefits from the rail, and I think it's going to make her a lot tougher than she might be, especially on a fair racetrack, because I think it's possible that some contenders in here are compromised by the racetrack, including the number 8, She Is All Business.
Yeah, I'm with you, and I mean, She Is All Business is a horse that they're giving up on because this one has plenty of pedigree, is half to Scuttlebuzz, as well as Runaway Rumor, who Linda Rice did have after a certain amount of time, put blinkers on, finally sort of resurrected some form for her. So dropping this one in class, putting blinkers on, just seems like maybe this horse could show up today in this spot. But I don't disagree that in terms of where this horse is post position wise, it's going to have to be a little bit more aggressive and get out of the gate quicker, because we saw yesterday you didn't necessarily have to be inside speed, but you needed to save that ground. So I think it's more just which jockeys do you trust to get that kind of trip?
I don't know. This is a funny horse. Larry Goishman is tremendous at breeding New York breds. His success is incredible over the years. This one's got a lot of pedigree to be dropping in for $40,000, so he clearly doesn't want to keep this one as a broodmare. I don't know what to make of her. I don't disagree with you. I think she's very dangerous, but I do think that Dubowie Wowie is too interesting for me to pass up in this race. Now, the post becomes incredibly problematic for her, and I do think she'll probably be compromised. But, you know, it's funny. She comes out of a race where you like the horse Closing Day that finished second in there that got, well, she is awful, but she was awful going in and awful coming out. This is the horse that had the trip in the race.
Yes.
This is the horse that, you know, sort of just had problems, sort of batterly steady in the race, back in the field, made a big, wide, premature move around the turn and actually kept on running a little bit and ran respectively in there. I think she's very, very interesting, obviously, based on that trip. But given the turf, I am a little bit concerned, but she should be at least a reasonable price. And Lady Laoban's probably not impossible in here, dropping down. It just seems like she's much better last year, but she's running against much easier horses, and she's a horse that can be forward in this race. So I'm not sure she's not going to get a reasonable trip. I would think that Louis Rivera will be aggressive with her and maybe second in all likelihood, depending on how aggressive Lane Luzzy is with Gregorian Solo on the far outside.
Yeah, I mean, this horse has some races that would make her very likely in here, and I think that maybe
They were last year.
They were. However, she is coming off that little bit of a layoff, and it's not as though her numbers really dramatically changed, even though we saw some of her better placings more than a year ago.
Race number 5, and Eddie will break after 5. Either race number 5 was a gigantic headache, and we'll start out with a horse that's probably the speed in Mastermind. And part of the reason I made the pick that I made was that I wondered if this horse would get scratched or not. This is winning at Santa Anita 3 back. I don't know what. I have no idea what David Jacobson does. His horses seem, as I say, win so randomly. This horse shipped down to Charlestown to be in an awfully tough spot last time out. You know, shipping down to Charlestown to be 7-1 and sort of steadied early, but really just was really bad in that race. I don't know if I trust this horse at all, but is potentially the speed.
Yeah, I don't know what to do with this one. We've seen him have some success with horses that he's taken from California, and some of them just don't really seem to be well spotted in terms of where they come in here based on what you think they'd want to do based on their prior form in Santa Anita, and they could improve or totally fall apart. And it's just a kind of a matter of question. But
Lord Captain.
Lord Captain, I just think that he's one that he ran a little bit better than it seems last time in a race that was going a little bit further. And just that thing that we talked about with the classes in Saratoga being so much tougher in terms of the 12-5, it's actually a much tougher race than it seems. So it's maybe more of a class drop now that he's going back for the $10,000 tag. I don't know where that 71 buyer came from, but it's not as though he's never run faster races in the past. And if he can bring something like that to the table again, he can make some sense.
Listen, I wouldn't knock anybody in here. I don't think he's coming out of a very good race, but I think these horses are all pretty bad. And the problem for me is I'm not going to pick this entry. All About the Money is a horse that is sort of sucked up a gold rail 2 races back, didn't do a heck of a lot of running last time with a very good trip. I would actually probably prefer gut feeling. I might have been inclined to take him at a better price because you don't have to go that far back before he has better races. But at the end of the day, he ran way behind your horse in his race last time, so I don't know if he's got anything left in the tank. And I don't want to just sort of cop out and take the entry in this race because I don't think they're that good. And the problem is this is a dramatically flawed field. Certainly Cumberland Blues, who I have second, you have nowhere, I think is dangerous. I know they were cheaper down at Monmouth. At the end of the day, though, who's he really running against here? And at least he's coming into the race in good form. I picked a horse that I normally don't like at all. But I picked Bronx Bomber, who is really dropping down to the bottom for the first time. And Bronx Bomber needs the lead to win. And I know the 7 has some speed, but I think Manny Franco has got to come out firing in this race with this horse. I know if he doesn't have the lead, he has 0 chance, especially at a mile. He's a need-to-lead type horse. He's only won when he's been in front. But he has been running against consistently better horses in his races and also races that were loaded with speed. There's not a lot of speed in this race, and I think this might be an opportunity for Manny to come out and try to wire the field. We'll see. We'll see if he has anything left. Believe me, he's not a horse I'm particularly thrilled by. But I thought maybe it was odd he was running at a mile, and I thought maybe the notion was we can use his speed better at a mile. But by the way, I have no confidence at all.
Yeah, I mean, he's hard to have anyone in this field. It's hard to have confidence in. I've tried him a couple times. He is one of the ones that makes some sense, at least on paper.
All right, we'll take a break. We'll be back with the pick 6 with the carryover and the pick 5 with the carryover as well.
For almost 150 years, the Saratoga name has been synonymous with the finest quality, sustainably sourced spring water available anywhere. Saratoga carries on the rich tradition of its forefathers by crafting each stunning blue glass bottle with the same attention to detail and care that has been its hallmark for generations. Visit SaratogaSpringwater.com today or ask for us by name at your local market or restaurant. Saratoga Spring Water. Make every day exquisite.
Welcome back to Talking Horses. Pick 6 carryover. The $39,000 carryover kicks off in race number 6. And I'm going to disagree with our morning line maker. I don't see how a horse with Bob Baffertless as the trainer, who was running in stake races at 2-year-old in Tall Paul, isn't the favorite in this race. And if I'm wrong, then I would have picked Yo Banana Boy, because I would rather bet Yo Banana Boy at a bigger price. Not that anybody's a big price. We'll see what happens. But we'll look at Tall Paul when he broke his maiden at Saratoga. And keep in mind, while this horse was in Bafford's barn a month ago, the Bafford horses that are shipped to New York are in John and Tanya Terranova's barn. This has been something that's gone on for years. So, yeah, this horse was with Bob in California, but hasn't been there for a month. Doesn't matter to me, because they're terrific trainers. I'm just not a huge fan of this horse, to be honest with you.
Don't you think that if he was any good, he would be out in California with Bob?
No.
I know he's a New York bred,
Yeah.
but...
No, I think he's running against New York. Well, wait a second. Okay.
If he was so
Okay.
good that he would be one of the horses that was facing graded stakes types.
but he's not, Sarah.
Exactly.
And that's in his PPs. Okay, so obviously he's New York bred running where he belongs. So I'm not sure what we're
But
saying.
it's just not the same Bob Baffert effect that some might
If
see
Co-Conspirator
at
was good, he'd be running in the Woodward. I mean, I'm saying that it's a New York bred. Well, it's a New York bred, and yes, he's not good enough to beat Opens in California, obviously, so he's running against New York breds. He's the main speed. I'm curious as to how this pace is going to play out in here, because you do have Fast Freeze Kaz outside of him with some speed. And isn't Yo Banana Boy supposed to be a little more forward after the debacle of last time?
Yeah, I think that he's a horse that could easily be of having that forward position, because they know that he's capable of having that early speed. And we saw just a terrible start for him last time out.
Well, I don't think it was a terrible start for him. I think it was just a terrible
ride.
I don't know. I mean, I like Louis Rivera. I don't understand how you go from being aggressive to this nonsense. And maybe it's just one of these things. Maybe the connections told him that they wanted to rate. Maybe they said, don't get
Maybe
involved.
it was instruction,
And everything
who
went
knows?
wrong with
Yeah.
him. But this is preposterous. And I'm not whining. I benefited from this. I like the winner of this race. But I don't think there's any real doubt that Yo Banana Boy should have won this race. And the winner, who didn't run that well in here and got the perfect triple at the rail, came back with a huge race next time out. Now, to be fair, On the Hill came back and ran terribly in his next start. But there's no denying that this was a crazy trip for this horse. And why would you suddenly change the running style after you run your best career race? That's something that I'll never understand.
And whatever the reason may be behind that, maybe wanting to try to figure out if there are different tactics available and this horse can be a little bit more versatile. The answer is no, and we figured that out. So he needs to be forward today.
Well, I'm going to disagree with that. He actually showed that he could be more versatile. He showed that he can rate a little bit. He just got an absurd trip in doing so. Imagine if he was able to get a comfortable trip and he just sort of sat in the two-path and he was able to close without losing all that ground and out steadying and all that nonsense. I think he'd been fine. I know he didn't win. I'm interested to see what the prices end up here, because I think at a better price than Landoro, and maybe I'm splitting hairs, 8-5 and 5-2. But as far as Landoro, why don't you talk about him?
Yeah, I mean, he just seems to have the consistent races that are all quite a little bit faster than some of the others in this field. I mean, he's had those mid-70s types of Beyer speed figures. He's run up against horses that we've seen defeat other horses in this field. Now, the Silver Satin that he beat is a different Silver Satin than was facing Yo Banana Boy. But I think that with him, you can excuse the trip that he had last time. He is coming off a little bit of a freshening as well. And he might just be a little bit quicker than some of these, because we've seen his races, at least his 3 prior races, end up being productive going forward.
Yeah, I mean, he's obviously a horse that's going to need a little pace up front because he doesn't have early speed. And as far as his fastness, well, you know, you are talking about Tall Paul, who did run a 76 Beyer in one of his races, and that was as a 2-year-old. And even his 66 and 68s can easily turn into the 80s. So I'm not sure, and that's one of the reasons I assume that Tall Paul will be shorter, because he can run faster than that. Maybe people worry about the 7 furlongs. Landoro had a nightmare trip last time. He was completely eliminated after the start of that race, and that was Belmont Stakes weekend when horses just weren't making up ground, and so he was just badly compromised by the start and his position on the racetrack. He had won that major key race, albeit with a good setup 3 races back, and then he ran to a Quiet Wisdom that just ran a huge race in his next start, but he still ran very well. I'm still a fan of his. I'm curious, though. I'm curious how this race is going to be bet more than anything else. Listen, we're talking about the 3 favorites, whether I agree with David Line or not,
right?
Whether 8-5 to 5-2. So there's not a lot of room in there. It's going to be very hard for one of these 3 horses not to win this race.
I agree, and I think if anyone else does, you're looking at some very interesting payouts going forward.
Yeah, I mean, it'll be interesting to see what the Pick Six probably takes in, $150,000 to $200,000, while this Pick 5 and the Pick 5 from race 7 with a $323,000 carryover. I think there will probably be $2 million bet today into it. I'll be surprised if there isn't. I think the break-even point with the takeout is a little bit over. It's about 6 and 2/3 times that, right? So it's 18. It's 19 to 19.4, and 2/3 of it. It's around 20, 2.1. It's
When
a
you
little over
do the
2.1
fast
million.
math, do you see like a visual in your head, or is it just...
No, it's not. It's also not 100%. I mean, well, just imagine it was 300,000, okay, and it was 6 and 2/3. So 6 times it is 1.8 million, and 2/3 of it is 2. It would be even $2 million. It's $23,000 more, so multiply that by 6 and 2/3. You know what I mean? It gets a lot easier when you look at it in that manner. Anyway, race number 7.
It's an interesting race.
It is. I mean, I do want to look at the Davy Crockett and volumetric race. this was a time when the rail was extremely strong on the inner, and if I had to pinpoint one of the worst rides that Flavia and Pratt gave all meet, and there weren't a lot of them, and
And
I'm
there
a big
aren't
fan.
a lot, so that's why we can say it.
No, I can say it anyway. I can say if there were a lot, but this was silly. I mean, he got impatient. He was 4 wide. Now, and in fairness to him, maybe he just wasn't as aware as he should have been about the rail, though he usually is, and he just put this horse in a terrible position. And Christophe Clement's horse, at least, was saving more ground into the rail in the first turn, rail in the second turn before angling out. And there is a very strong argument he should have won. The winner of this race is Splitting Horses, the 5, got a perfect ground-saving trip and an angle-out trip. And Volumetric never saw the rail. 2 on the first turn, 3 in the backstretch, 4 in the turn. He just had everything go wrong against the racetrack and still ran. So to me, he's the one you want out of that race.
Yeah, he makes a ton of sense, and I completely agree with you on the trips that Davy Crockett and he had and the discrepancies between who saved ground and who didn't. I think that it's worth at least considering that today is kind of going to be a little bit similar, but not quite as much of a gap as we saw with Valuation Metric last time out. But Davy Crockett still got a nice inside post as well. So
oh, he can win. I wouldn't. I mean, I made a small pick 5 ticket, but I'm not going to bet that much money into it, so I left him out, even my 3rd horse. What am I missing with the one? Other than it'll be 30 to 1.
Either this was just a bad buy and we're all missing something, or this is a horse that I can't believe yet that they paid this much money for a global campaign and he has absolutely no ability at all with no pedigree.
Because no horse that people spend a lot of money for stinks?
No.
I mean, you realize how many horses with big purchase prices running claiming tags relatively early in their career? You're solely saying that somebody paid $650,000 because they...
No, not just that. Because of the sire only standing for $12,500, no damn side pedigree. I mean, this horse did get a turf workout in. That first race we saw be productive moving forwards with Chancellor McPatrick coming back and winning the Hopeful. Maybe he's just not a dirt horse. I don't know. He does have an inside position. And that's
wait a second. You're not going to say that and not let me make fun of you.
You can make fun of me.
You thought the Chancellor McPatrick race was a horrendous race, and we threw him out.
Yes.
So now it's a good race because he won the Hopeful? What about all the other horses that ran badly out of it?
I don't know. Remains to be seen. That's why you were arguing with me about how those horses that came back, well, you don't know yet.
Just good pointing it out. It's apples and oranges at turf rate. Listen, the horse could be 30 to 1. I wish you the best of luck. The dam did win 3 races on the turf, albeit she's not very good. The thing is, Junior Alvarado's riding the other Mott horse, and Junior does usually ride the ones that they prefer. And I thought it was interesting with Well Suited coming back on the short rest. He's sort of dying to get him in this race. I thought Barricade, I was kind of between the 4 and 5 in this race. I thought Barricade ran very, very well first time out. Jumped up at the start, breaking about a length slow, was way behind a race that was dominated up front with no pace and was actually running a bit at the end. I think Barricade is very dangerous in this race. So I just feel like Volumetric, in a short ticket, in a short thing, ran better than Davy Crockett, so I'll take him out of the race, but I am scared of Barricade. Barricade ran very well last time.
And it was a decent number, too.
No, he was good last time, and I'm not sure he's the worst to beat, and obviously there are a lot of unknowns in this race, but I thought he ran really well in that race
Yeah, he would be on my ticket.
And I love the fact that George Weaver has a horse named Mortal Lock. That's a great name for a horse.
Yeah, I remember we were talking about it. I was like, please do some running.
You
know,
know,
so cool.
This horse did do a little bit of running. He's outposted here, and I don't know how good he really is. But I thought this horse might have actually run okay in that race. I'm just not sure this is the race I would want to take him in. But if I went very deep into pick 5, he'd be in there somewhere as a C. Race number... I knew I should have brought my water up here. I knew it. Race number 8. We're going to start with risk threshold, who is the inside speed. And obviously on yesterday's track, that was a bit of an advantage. I know this race got a low buyer. I'm not buying it. I think it was a much better race than that. I know the winner came back and didn't run as well the next time, but ran a better figure in a subsequent start. I thought this horse was super impressive and is the clear speed from the inside in here. And even I picked her before I thought the track might help her running style. In fact, she saved ground. I know that the 7 in our time ran a faster race last time, and I'm not denying it. But I don't know, as we show in our time. I think I have a stat. We'll show the race, and I have a stat for Safi Joseph. I feel like in our time, last time was the time. And I'm kind of wondering if these Safi Joseph explosions up at Saratoga are going to carry that form, especially immediately forward.
Well, I think that anyone that got hot at a certain period of time going forwards, you have to think that the game being cyclical will eventually catch up with everybody. But we're going to see if that momentum can continue or not for some of them. But the time to bet the savvy horses in Saratoga, it's past. Maybe this horse just made sense in that spot.
Maybe it's past.
But I don't know. Just in terms of that, who that horse was facing, You Should Be Dancing and Line of Right are not winning types of horses.
I agree.
This field could be a little bit more intriguing than that one.
The other major player in there didn't really show up. How exactly do you see Lamorna winning this race, being the two horses she has to beat are both forwardly placed horses and she has no speed?
I know. I think that I want to give her the excuse that she was off the layoff when she wasn't able to go by a risk threshold and had a trip in that race.
She had a massive trip.
Awful trip. And then she did come back to win, but this is a horse that seemed to always have some sort of bit of ability. It just has had these awful trips in some of her races, some of it her own doing, by being a horse that has that tendency to come from off the pace. But I kind of wonder if this horse has a little bit of ability, and maybe if those two horses that like to be more forwardly placed, I know there's never any pace around here, but it's a pipe dream, but she could end up saving some ground with Manny Franco.
She got a massive pace that collapsed last time out. And the second horse, and I made a lot of money when Lamorna won, so I'm not whining, but the second horse should have won that race. The second horse was much the best in there. Came back to improve her Buyer point 4 points, winning Kentucky Downs. The third horse came back and ran worse, 10 Buyer points worse, and she'd actually run okay forward. I don't know. I've got her third because, like you, I think she has some talent, but I wonder if race dynamics are significantly against her in this race. And I just feel like she got a little bit lucky last time out.
Yeah.
I like
but she
her
also
more.
got very unlucky the time before that.
She did, but she was ninth, beaten 5 lengths. Leslie's Humor is a short race during the morning line. I'm not sure I see it.
I didn't really either. I get that the turf race was okay, but I don't know. There just wasn't a ton for me to go on based on how these horses have some more proven turf form.
I thought the other horses seemed a little bit better, and we got a couple of Joe Sharp turnbacks. Fantastical, the 6, and Toasted Roll, the 2, were not impossible. Joe Sharp is 3 for 43 with turnbacks for what it's worth. There's a decent enough ROI because there's a $73 horse in there, but with that and pumping it up, it's still only $2.12. It means it's 50 cents without the horse. I don't know.
I think Fantastical's worth with a little bit of a look, though, because in terms of who this one has faced.
Who's that?
Fantastical, the 6.
Okay.
Worth a little bit of a look based on who she's faced. Poolside was Slim. Nicest Pie was entering a stake and scratch. I mean, Neon Beach is an okay dirt horse.
That was on synthetic, though.
I'm not saying she's going to win this race. She just faced some decent
No, but
horses.
they run a different surface. I get it. No, I get it. The 10 Artemis Sounds a turnback for Pletcher. He's 2 for 42 with his turnbacks. Turning back on the turf, not an easy thing to do. Very few trainers. Mike Maker, I think, has respectable numbers. Not great, but respectable. Race number 9 is quite a mess in here, but the horse to beat in this race is the horse we both have third, the 6, Brighter Days Ahead, as we show the last race. I think this horse ran very well last time and could be the controlling speed in this race. I think this horse is an absolute major use.
Yeah, of course. I think that this horse makes a ton of sense coming in here. Is one that was claimed from Jose D'Angelo in that last spot, was favored in that race, finishing second. Master of Arms was a horse that was dropping pretty significantly in class that was able to beat him, and he just makes a lot of sense because he'd been in some tougher spots before that, and then they were a little bit more realistic about where he might be able to do his better running. But I think that some of the horses that are dropping in class in this race could be a little bit more interesting.
Okay, what am I missing with Beachwalker?
I think that he's one that he has been able to maintain some of his form after coming out of the David Jacobson barn. And that's not something we see with a lot of those horses because he's been facing tougher since he was claimed for Michelle Giangiulio, and he's been running okay and kind of doing what he usually does, which is picking up some pieces in those races. But those have both been against some tougher company in that starter allowance last time out, and as well as 2 back. And I think that now getting in for the tag again, he is a horse that has those fast races to go back to, and maybe he could sit an okay stalking trip and not be too far back.
Okay, Milton the Monster is dropping down in here, and I just looking at some stats for Michelle Nevin, I found that her drop downs with non-maidens and dirt sprints, she's 4 for 8. She has decent all-around drop downs. He may just not be able to run a step anymore,
tried
but
him
like
so
you,
many times.
dropping. Well, he's never run this low,
Right.
and I just thought he was a little interesting for Michelle, who does have those good drop down numbers, so I put him in there. I also thought the 8 Papa Rocket was a little bit interesting. My concerns are twofold with Papa Rocket. He's going to be a big price, so I'm going to use him. It's very hard to claim from Scott Becker, who this horse was claimed from 2 back. Claim from Scott Becker in dirt overall, 8 for 89 over the last 5 years, 9% and 82% ROI. In sprints, 4 for 67 and a 67% ROI. He's apparently a trainer, and I don't really know I don't know anything about him, that is very, very hard to claim from. And then you get the Rob Atras factor. And if it wasn't for Neat on the turf, Rob would be 1 for 25 over the last 3 months. His horses have just not been running very well, and I think that is a big factor, especially for a guy like Rob, that we see as a very, very streaky trainer.
Yeah.
On the other hand, this horse did get an absolutely insane trip in his last start and didn't really run that badly. So I don't want to completely discount him, and as you were pointing out, he's another horse who at least is dropping down in here. I think the 6 is the one to beat. I think the 5 and 8 are the interesting horses to use, and that's why I put them 1, 2 in here. You want to mention anybody else?
I think it's interesting that Air Show finally comes back.
I tell you what, they were talking about it in the elevator when I was coming home last night. Race number 10, the race that Cinderella's Dreams connections will be asking themselves tonight, why did we ship up to Canada to run against Moira? Remind me. They got
What price would she be in here? 1 to 9?
No, but she'd be very short, and the field would probably look different if she was running. And I think it's one of these cases that people are running because she's not. So I'm glad she's not running. I'm just sort of surprised she's not running. And obviously, distance is a major factor.
Yes.
But the horse that you know isn't going to have a problem is Lady Mary, who's coming in from Germany and ran a this is 3 back in the trial for the Diana, which is the German Oaks, which she ran 3rd in last time out. And this horse Earl, who beats her and then subsequently improved a lot to beat her by even more than German Oaks, she's okay looking her up. And the German horses are a little bit of a cut below, but I don't think they're a cut below these horses, and we know she's going to get a distance. To me, she is an hour the horse to beat, and if she's 7 to 2, you're probably supposed to be betting her. I think she's supposed to be about 9 to 5 in here.
Yeah, she just makes a ton of sense, and I know this was kind of a blanket finish in this race, but she's one
I'll take any of the 4.
Right. You don't
bring them all over.
She can get the distance, which we haven't seen from some of the other horses in this field yet. And Jack Sisterson does very well when bringing over the foreign shippers on the turf. He's 3 for 9 over the past 5 years, positive ROI. And maybe because of connections, this horse isn't going to be that overwhelming favorite like this horse would be if we were talking Godolphin Charlie Appleby in terms of connections.
Yeah, but I don't agree with David. I don't think she and Apple. It's funny because, I mean, he doesn't like the Albie horse at all, and I think she's worth talking about. You don't like her at all.
I tried her last time. I was very disappointed.
Well, she couldn't beat those horses last time, and she was 3 wide around the track.
No, but I also wonder if it's distance, too.
Well, I mean, if you look up the pedigree, there is some distance going back on the dam side in this horse. So I won't be shocked if this horse is effective going longer. And she was 3 wide around the racetrack on a day you wanted to be saving ground in that race. So I can give her a bit of an excuse. I don't love her either. Don't get me wrong. And you know I'm always betting against these Godolphin horses to get over bet. And if she's a very similar price to the 7, I think it's absolutely preposterous. And you're probably on the right track just avoiding her. But I don't think she's a horse that you want to throw out in the pick 5. Because I just feel like you really want to miss the pick 5 when this horse wins, you're going to feel awfully stupid. She's not a horse I would bet at a shortish price, but I wouldn't want her to beat me in here. I'm going to guess with Mount Saint Michel, and we'll take a look at her at Woodbine 3 races back when she broke her maiden. Honestly, this is sort of in Brendan Walsh I trust. My feeling with her is she's run well enough against some better horses in the division, and I know Whiskey Decision. Maybe the decision made to take the blinkers off and then Raider yesterday was one made while there was whiskey involved, because that certainly blew up in their face.
Yeah, it did not go well.
I don't know why they didn't want to be forward with her, at least somewhat forward.
The fact that Ori got second in that race, I mean, that just illustrated the where you wanted to be on the
inside.
But
but this horse has a funny pedigree. The good horse is Lupe Fernandez, who was a miler and came over here and ran at least one Breeders' Cup Mile, I think. But there's also Alhira or something that was actually very good going longer. So there is some real distance in there, and I think Wooten Basque has a chance to be good as a distance. So I think that this horse has enough pedigree, and this was the one that I decided to take a shot with. And it's nothing more than a shot because you don't really know anything, and based on her form, she's probably not good enough.
Well, you at least think that maybe she's going to be a little bit more forward than some of the other horses that you would hope.
Yes, I agree. No, I agree. I'd like to see Kendrick sitting second behind the horse you have on top, and I do think that Makanga becomes much more dangerous because of the way the rail was playing, and I imagine that played a factor in why you picked her.
It did, and she was one of the horses that was cross-entered yesterday, and I thought they might go there because of the distance being a little bit shorter. Well, we'll find out. It remains to be
No,
seen.
no, I'm using her too. I'm just saying they would have won
But
yesterday.
you know
They
where
would've
she's
won that
going to
race
be
yesterday.
early. And the ride that she got last time, yes, she was forward in that race, but she was not happy.
Not happy?
In that race. She was throwing her head. She was swapping leads back and
They
forth.
should have scratched her. No, seriously, they should have scratched her because John Velasquez doesn't ride like that.
No. You don't see him with his feet in the dash
If you
like
didn't
that.
know it was John Velasquez, you'd say, why were they riding a 10-pound bug rider that's never been in a turf race in their life in a graded stake? You know, and clearly they're just, I don't know if something went wrong. I don't know
if she was just worked up. And
they're worried she's going to run off. They'd been better off letting her run off. I think the concern with her, and I agree with you, she's very dangerous here, is the distance is obviously a concern, but the bigger concern is, did that race where she got dueled in the ground two backs screw her up? Or was her last race just a result of, I don't know what? That was just bizarre.
I want to forgive the last race because we haven't seen her act like that in the past.
Well, because she needs to go.
Right.
The other thing, are you a little worried that she's going to just run off with Lane Leslie? But maybe running
But
off's
maybe
fine.
that's fine.
Yeah,
I don't know.
no.
You know,
Maybe that'll work. Right.
Maybe that's something that might be okay given how we've seen the turf play so far and where I want her to be on this racetrack, because isn't it just easier to just go?
Oh, no, I agree. If their
if she burns
plan
out, she
isn't to
burns
just
out.
right, no, I 100% agree with you. If their plan isn't just let her go and just let the
Find
chips
out.
fall as they may,
Right.
then why the hell are they running her in here?
Right.
Why would they
If she's
run her
not on
here
the
instead of a
lead,
mile?
there's no
I know it's a
point.
350,000. It's more money,
No, but
she
she
was
drew
more
the
than
rail
but
yesterday,
she was more
too.
Than, well, you didn't know the rail. They didn't know
No,
the
but
situation.
still saving ground.
They
inside
decided a long
speed.
time ago. Yes, they decided a while ago to scratch her. We have the mixologist video, Eddie, right? I forgot to mention that we're showing
Mike
that.
Smith riding.
Yes, we're trying to figure out why Mike Smith would come in here. And I do think this filly is good. I am extremely skeptical of this horse getting back with distance, but she is after Catnip, who was good going long.
Princess
but that
Grace.
horse is a kitten's joy.
Right.
And this is a frosted. There's a big difference.
What did you think of this race overall?
This is not the race we're supposed to be showing.
was-
This is Just and I, Eddie. You can
Aw,
leave it. This is
Eddie.
Just and I, who I'm not using. How about you? We know she can get the distance.
She can get the distance. That
her
is a
done
feather
in
in her cap. But as far as the cold meat that Danny Gargan had, I will wait and he can beat me with some of his horses coming back. But the mixologist, that pace wasn't that quick, but it really completely fell apart.
Yeah, I agree. There was a lot of race in Saratoga. As we show the mixologist race, we finished second. She was justifiably put up, but she
Yes.
wasn't the one fouled. The one who was fouled was the number 4 horse, and you'll see it happening. We have that video, Eddie?
Wrigleyville?
Okay. I just don't trust mixologists to get the distance.
And she was so with the race flow last time. Yes, she has the pedigree, but I just didn't want it at a short price.
Yeah, I actually think she's pretty good. I thought she got very much the wrong trip in her race 2 back. She obviously ran well to beat a nice horse in Deep Satin first time out. So I do think she's pretty good. And I think they're just taking a shot for the money. What the story is with Mike Smith, he couldn't have flown in to ride this horse, could he? And if you are, Mike, you have less going on in your life than I do. And that's hard.
You would have to think that on a big Saturday,
I hope he was in New York.
He had
just hanging
something
out.
going on.
Maybe he was just hanging out in the city, you know, and he had
Come
nothing
on
to
in.
do, and he decided to come in
Called
and ride a
in.
horse.
maybe.
I don't know. I'm
Didn't
not
have
sure
that
this
one
horse
on my
wants to get
bingo
the
card for
distance.
today. I looked
Yeah,
up
that
and
was a
like,
little
really?
surprising.
Okay.
We were surprised by
But
that.
yeah, interesting.
But apparently, I was going to make a joke, but I'm going to let it go. We got nothing else to talk about here.
No, it's an
This is a
interesting
crapshoot. This is a race where it may just end up being logical, and Lady Mary will win the race and pay $640, and you'll say I
Sure.
overcomplicated it
Right.
by using 4
You'll be like,
horses.
oh, she could have
or
been even
some bomb's
shorter.
going to beat you and say I should have used more horses. It is a funny race, and I'm glad there's a big field, and it's an
Yeah.
entertaining betting race.
Definitely.
To me, though, there is a solid
Horse to
core
beat.
with Lady Mary.
Yes,
right?
I agree.
The one you just know is good enough and can handle the distance. Race number 11, you have taken the horse on the rail.
Yeah, I just think that these are horses that, the ones that I wanted in this race were the ones that were dropping in class, or the ones that are a little bit more underexposed in terms of less chances to lose. And this is one
In other
of,
words, the favorites.
yes.
Okay, I'm just
To
pointing it
simplify,
out.
yes, I think that the horses that make sense on paper and in terms of the morning line are the ones that you kind of want to gravitate to in this race. And I just didn't have a big opinion in here about anybody in particular. I think that Out of Favor is going to be a shorter price, but did this horse really do any running? Could this horse win? Absolutely. I don't know.
I put her on my pick 5 tickets. I didn't want her to beat me, but I don't like her in this race. I thought she was awful last time out. She was wide in the first turn, but the horse who was 3 wide finished ahead of her. So
Yeah, Chad Brown just has good numbers doing this, but I did not like those efforts at all.
well, his drop-down numbers I don't think are great. his maiden special weight, the maiden claimer, and turf routes. Take a look at those. I don't think they're great.
I think they're still
not
pretty
good for
decent.
Todd Pletcher.
No.
Todd Pletcher, maiden
They're
special,
not good for Todd, I do
maiden
know that.
claimer on the turf routes is 17 for 76, 22%, $1.33 ROI. At Naira, he's 6 for 29 with a $1.35 ROI. So they're very similar. Yeah, she can win. I've got her in there. I mean, Victory Dash gets a little more interesting because of her speed in this race, though we'll see if counterattack is aggressive like she was last time. In a fairly run race where the bias doesn't get in the way, I'm very confident Poker Joker is the horse to beat. I don't know that she'll be 6 to 1. Maybe she will be because Romero's riding. But this is the Monmouth race where she finished third. Maine Beach would be 1 to 9 in this field.
Yes.
And she ran a race, in my opinion, that would absolutely win this race. So the question you ask is, what happened last time and why are they dropping? Well, what happened last time was there was a driving rainstorm during the race, and this horse got completely steadied out of the race in the early running and just back to the back of the pack. And the race was dominated forward. Yes, we saw McCullough come back and somehow improve dramatically. I don't know, that horse was 5 to 1 to win in Saratoga, but did get the job done. And she actually did some running, or he did some running in the stretch, excuse me. And I thought he ran fine in there with a significant trip. And if he runs back to his race 2 back, he'll win. We'll
Makes
see
sense.
if he's compromised.
And then as far as Chad Brown's 25% dollar at 94 ROI, maiden special weight to maiden claiming on turf.
How about routes? Routes is what I was wondering.
Routes.
You may be right. I'm just
Specifically. Routes. 19%.
19% with what ROI?
$1.61.
Yeah, so
Yeah,
his numbers
not
do
quite as
drop
much.
precipitously. They're not terrible. They're not as bad as Todd's.
Yeah.
But those aren't Chad Brown-like numbers. 19% dropping in a maiden special. Those are not particularly great numbers. And the ROI is not terrible, but interesting. He's had a lot more success doing it with
Sprinters, yeah.
sprinters, something you don't think of that often. All right.
Yeah.
Well, good luck in the pick 5, pick 6, the carryovers. Heading over to Naira Bets, best place to play. Naira Bets, match 200 will match the $200 of your initial deposit. Check out track stats when you're over there. And then, of course, more importantly and most importantly, late pick 5 carryover, $323,000 starting in race number 7. You got to get involved for something. You got to say at the end of the day, you took your shot to win a few dollars. Even if you bet a few dollars, you bet small. I'm putting up a $48 ticket on the show later today. I don't, I would play it differently overall with A's and B's and C's, but for the sake of the show, I'm going to take a shot. I'm going to single risk threshold in race number 8. We've got a carryover of $39,000 in the pick 6 as well. That starts in race 6. We also have a $50 bankroll builder, 50 to win the Woodbine Mile. I'd say bet the favorite and turn it into an extra 2 to 5. You can get yourself about $320 on a 240 winner of that race. That's actually great value.
It is.
You won't find better value than that anywhere, so
Moira's
do
so
that.
good.
What's that?
Moira's so good.
I was looking at this bankroll builder, and there's actually an argument. There's 5 races, I think.
Yep.
And you get an extra $20 if you bet all 5. So
Oh,
it'd be
really?
$120, so it's
So
close
Moira,
to...
naval power.
No, no, it's not. It's only the naval power race. No,
Oh,
the
okay.
second one is the cotillion. From what I've heard, and they're drawing that race money, there's going to be a 1 to 9 shot in there as well. So you have very close to 2 sort of locks in the first
Yeah.
2. So you
This
get
is
your money
great
back,
value.
and he's going to get on a free roll in the other 3 bets, right? Because you're already getting $120 back, and you've gotten your money back plus a little bit, right? So you're like, if you whiff in the other 3 races, you're just going to end up breaking
good.
even. So you
Yeah.
got to bet all 5 of these. Cross country big 5. It's true, right? I mean,
Yeah,
that makes
I
sense.
mean, I think that both of those horses are extremely likely winners. So.
If Naval Power doesn't win, he'll probably have unseated the rider. Monmouth, Woodbine, Belmont, Woodbine, 3 stake races, cross country big 5. We're showing Woodbine on America's Day of the Races, which is on from 12:30 to 6:30 on FS2. We're done.
We did it.
All right. Chris Griffin is just getting started. He'll be up with the reprise scratch and changes in just a few moments. Have a great day. Good luck.
For almost 150 years, the Saratoga name has been synonymous with the finest quality, sustainably sourced spring water available anywhere. Saratoga carries on the rich tradition of its forefathers by crafting each stunning blue glass bottle with the same attention to detail and care that has been its hallmark for generations. Visit SaratogaSpringwater.com today or ask for us by name at your local market or restaurant. Saratoga Spring Water. Make every day exquisite.